Welcome to the Awakened Goddess Show, your source for inspiration, wisdom, and personal discovery. The place to learn from a diverse mix of mentors, metaphysical experts, spiritual leaders, and best-selling authors from around the world. I'm your host, Angela Wilkinson. Join me as I explore the minds of my masterful guests while they share powerful insights and easy-to-use tools you can start using right away. Now, let's tap into the energy of the Awakened Goddess and be enlightened by today's guest. Jodi Cohen is a best-selling author, award-winning journalist, and founder of Vibrant Blue Oils. She's combined her training in nutritional therapy and aromatherapy to create unique proprietary blends of organic and wild-crafted essential oils that helped her heal her own anxiety, insomnia, and autoimmunity. Her #1 best-selling book, Healing with Essential Oils, has been widely praised as one of the most well-researched consumer books in years. In it, Jodi synthesizes decades of leading scientific research and gives you new tools to take action immediately. Now let's welcome Jodi to the show. Hi, I'm your host, Angela Wilkinson, and welcome to this episode of the Awakened Goddess Show, where we co-create powerful, conscious conversations on the leading edge. Today I have Jodi joining me, and we're going to be talking about how we can use essential oils to enhance our sleep, digestion, detoxification, while reducing stress and inflammation. So welcome, Jodi.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to talk about this today because I've used essential oils in the past for like aromatherapy and a little bit, but you take this much deeper, right?
Yes,
You wrote a complete book about it, and it's been part of your life experience now for a while. Yes. So I'm curious if we can go back to what was the catalyst that led you down this path?
Yeah, I think that, sometimes the idea of turning lemons into lemonade is really inspiring. So essential oils found me on my darkest hour of my darkest day. My husband is bipolar and attempted suicide and needed to be hospitalized. And the minute he was safe, and it wasn't my job to keep him safe, my adrenals that had been running a 10-year marathon collapsed from out and under me. And our kids were quite little. And it was literally all I could do to wake up in the morning, make them breakfast, pack their lunches, and get them to school. And then I would come back and I had no energy. All I wanted to do was crawl back into my sweats and just lie on bed. And, I knew I had a job, I had responsibilities. This couldn't continue. But after my second was born, they had put me on some postpartum medicine, and it made me crazy. It turns out if you have impaired detoxification, sometimes you recycle drugs and it can be too much. And it turns out I didn't know that at the time, but I just knew that pharmaceutical drugs were not a good fit for me, but I didn't know what to do. And so I was blessed to have very good friends who owned a local supplement company who came over with a big box of essential oils and just put them next to me on the couch and said, "These are going to help you." And I said, "Great. How do I use them?" And they said, "No. You're very smart and you're very intuitive. You will figure it out." And they left. And, fortunately, I didn't really feel like getting off the couch, but they left the box next to me. And I had been practicing nutritional therapy for long enough that I knew how to test different supplements for different people. And I knew that the problem was my adrenals. And so I just tested the box and said, "Is anything in here going to help my adrenals?" And I was surprised because I got a really strong yes. I mean, my answers can range from kind of moderate to no to yes. And that was really inspiring. It was actually the best kind of encouragement I had gotten in weeks. And so I thought, okay. So I drilled down and wound up getting 5 oils, which surprised me because normally there's 1, maybe 2 that present. And I was stumped for a little bit, and then I thought, well, what am I going to do with that? And it occurred to me I could combine them. And all of a sudden I got very excited. So I went into my kitchen, and I didn't know anything about oils. So I basically pulled out a shot glass and started testing how many drops of this blend, how many drops of this blend, and combined them and intuitively applied them over my adrenal glands, which are on the back of the body over the kidneys. And if you want to find them, the kidneys are about the size of your fist. And they start on the bottom rib, the 12th rib. So if you line up your fist to the very bottom rib, and then right on top is the adrenals. To say that I had kind of an immediate shift is a bit of an understatement. I'm a lifelong runner. In my past, whenever I was upset about anything, just going for a run made me feel better. I didn't even have the energy to go on a run. Like that felt like too much. And I put this on, all of a sudden I had the thought, oh my God, I could go running. And I hadn't felt that in weeks. And so I went running and kind of collapsed again and reapplied and thought I could take a shower and go to the supermarket, and it was like touch points, but it got me through the day. And after that first day, it occurred to me, wow, I wonder what else I can do with these oils. Because I was kind of insomniac, which is not uncommon when you're adrenally exhausted. It messes up your hormone rhythms.
Right.
And so I made one for sleep, and not only did I sleep, but I had vivid dreams, and it was like, a little bit like yoga, right? You're able to do crow, and suddenly you're like, oh, I wonder what else you can do, and then you invert and you can do handstand. Like every step kind of led to the next step, and it took a couple weeks, and I started to feel like myself again. And one of the impediments when I was so depressed, I couldn't answer the phone. All these people wanted to help me, but I couldn't, I wasn't in a place to receive. And so
Mm-hmm.
when I finally felt better, I said, okay, let's all go to lunch. And about 20 people showed up, and many of them were in kind of the healing world, and they were all super curious, about my journey. And so when I was telling them about this, I had the oils with me because I was carrying them everywhere. They wanted to try them. They were smelling them. They loved them. They wanted to integrate them into their practice. And, within a week, I'm getting this great feedback like, oh my God, that insomnia blend is amazing. Oh my gosh, the adrenal balance is unbelievable. So they said, you should do something with this. And I figured, well, gosh, this is so obvious. Of course, it's already being done.
Right.
So I went online and was really shocked to realize no one is quite looking at it the way I am. Like there are tons of companies that offer really, really, really high quality single oils. And they do blends, but none of the blends are kind of what I'm doing. And then I looked at the way they were explaining things, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful that I didn't start here, because it seemed so complicated that I would have felt unqualified. And I never
Mm.
dove in. I would have assumed like, oh gosh, I need to read 7 books and learn everything before I can even start. So that was kind of the impetus. And it's interesting. It was originally targeted to practitioners, but there are a lot of really, really highly educated people that have healed themselves. They went to doctors, they went down that allopathic route, and they weren't getting better. And so they started changing their diet, and they're consummate researchers, and they're really highly educated and smart. And they were finding me and asking, can I try your products? And I'm not going to, having been at the lowest of the low, you're not going to turn anyone away that you might possibly be able to help. So that's kind of how it grew. It was very, very organic. And it was kind of a hobby. I was a journalist in a former life, so it was fun for me to research things and write blogs. And then it got to a point where I had like 20,000 people on my list, and I thought I should do something. My
Wow.
kids are at that age where they don't need me as much, so I decided to put it all. Actually, here's my book. I put everything
Yes.
that I've been learning and getting feedback on in this book that I'm happy to kind of go through. But it seems to me, the analogy I like to use, we have an 87-year-old neighbor who's adorable. We love him. And his grandkids gave him an iPhone for Christmas. His name's Tom. Tom uses his iPhone to make calls and to receive calls. And my kids every day are like, Tom, you can take pictures. You can get directions. You can get email. Tom isn't interested. He just wants to use his phone as a phone. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And there is nothing wrong with using oils to make your room smell good or to clean your house. There is nothing wrong with that. But it's scratching the surface of their potential.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the message that I want to put out there so that more people are able to help themselves heal.
Mm. Well, and just hearing your story, I love how organic it unfolded and how um, I want to highlight that it was a very intuitive process for you, and
Completely.
that your friends, it was like a blessing that they just allowed you to play with
Yeah.
these oils and figure out what you needed, and
Yes.
how beautifully that unfolded into, I mean, that's incredible to have 20,000 people on your list and following your work. And this was something that you kind of naturally, you just fell into in a way.
Oh, completely. I grew up in Seattle when it was very outdoorsy, and I used to have to walk through the woods to get to our friends' houses. I used to have rituals with plants. Like I've always been very, very intuitive and very guided when it comes to nature. And so it's interesting. I used to think I was just making it up, but now I realize, wow, I actually really knew what I was doing.
Hmm. Yeah. And now it's like looking back, I love how we can look back at our experiences and see how everything lined us up to where we are right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
completely.
Yeah.
Completely. I lived in London right near, they have a huge kind of natural medicine garden. I used to go, like everyone else was going out drinking. I would go to the garden and like look at plant. I mean, I was so quirky, but yeah, it's really in line with what I've wound up putting out in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm sure you're really excited about your book. Now, in your book, you do a beautiful job about laying, you go through, you talk about prioritizing,
Right.
um, you prioritize like issues or
Yes.
health concerns or things that you're dealing with. So I would love for you to explain that process,
Oh,
why we
absolutely.
want to prioritize and how that works.
Yeah, I mean, in my practice, I tend to attract a lot of women like myself. They're over 30. They're not train wrecks, but like they've gained weight that they can't lose, and they're more tired than they're used to being, and they walk in the pantry and can't remember why they went there. And so it's this idea that's pretty common in the holistic field that when the body is in balance, then it can help heal itself. It's the idea, in Seattle, there's always construction on the freeway. So if you have a 4-lane freeway and 3 of the lanes are closed, guess what? There's going to be traffic. But
Hmm.
then when they open up the 4 lanes, it kind of works itself out. And it's the same idea in the body. When there's something that's blocked, we can't heal the right way. And it kind of comes down to a few 5 systems that tend to be out of balance. Sometimes when we have like 5 people talking to us at the same time, we can't take it all in. You need to prioritize and take one person and then the next person. So when people come to me and they're like, I'm overweight, I'm tired all the time, I have all these things going on, you need a system. You can't address everything at once. So the first place I start is sleep.
Hmm.
If you're not sleeping, it's very hard to heal. And sleep can be a combination of things. It can be, there are different imbalances with trouble falling asleep versus staying asleep. So if you have trouble falling asleep, this was me, you're exhausted, but you can't stop thinking. And it's because the hormones are out of balance. So the hormone that helps you fall asleep is called melatonin, and it's released by the pineal gland. The hormone that works in tandem with that and has an antagonistic relationship is cortisol. So it makes sense, if a lion is chasing you, you really don't want to fall asleep. So cortisol is the hormone that we release when we're under stress. And if you're under stress, it's a bit of a teeter totter. So cortisol is high, melatonin is low, and cortisol should be high in the morning to wake you up. And then throughout the day, it wanes and the melatonin increases. But guess
Mm,
what? If you're having stressful thoughts and your brain can't differentiate between a physical threat and kind of an anticipatory threat, like your thoughts, you're going to have high cortisol, which forces melatonin down. So I created an
interesting.
that triggers the pineal gland to naturally release melatonin, which is great because you can supplement with melatonin, which is totally fine. But at a certain point, your body starts to read the supplement as, oh, we're good. We don't need to produce more. So it actually down regulates its production. So this is a way
Mm,
of stimulating the body to naturally release melatonin. And then, so melatonin is down, cortisol is high. You naturally release melatonin. It forces cortisol down, which is often a good backdoor into anxiety for people that have kind of anxiety at night and get a little OCD at night. That's really high cortisol levels. So if you naturally lower the cortisol, it helps with the anxiety.
yeah, that's interesting that you're saying that because sometimes I feel like a young child that you're trying to put down for a nap, but they don't want to miss all the excitement that's happening. Because I tend to be slow start in the morning, and then at night I'm still working.
Yep,
Uh, but and then in the morning I have trouble waking up. Like, and
yep,
if my sleep pattern is disrupted, I am not a nice person. Like I wake
yes,
up cranky.
yes. Yes, and that's actually a fantastic point that I try to tell my clients is that we're different people all the time, right? Like if we're starving and we have blood sugar issues, we are a very different person when we're hungry than if we've just had a great meal and maybe we're like taking a nice walk. or when we're tired, we're different. And that's because it's self-regulating, right? We're
Hmm.
trying to help the body self-regulate. And if you think about it, like if you're hangry and you're trying to get home and traffic is terrible and someone cuts you off, you might say some four-letter words. You might not be happy about it. Whereas if you have all the time in the world and your favorite song is on the radio and they cut you off, you might just think, oh, I guess they're in a hurry. Like you react very differently depending on how imbalanced your body is. And oils are a fantastic tool for helping you get in balance so that then you react in your best possible way.
Hmm. So with that circumstance of having trouble waking up, is it more so regulating the falling asleep piece and then naturally the
It's a combination. It's basically that your body has gotten out of rhythm. So the
right.
circadian rhythm is off. And so to reset it, it's a combination of things. It's balancing your adrenals because they do need a little bit more resilience in the morning and they're working too hard at night. So we have an oil that helps put the adrenals back in balance, or for people who like to make their own formulas, just consider something to balance the adrenals, to even out the highs and the lows. And then the way the stress cascade in the body starts in the brain with the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus triggers the pituitary to tell the adrenals to release cortisol, which is the stress hormone, and then monitors kind of the levels of cortisol. And when it's good, it shuts it off. It's like a thermostat. It's called a negative feedback loop. So, you set
Hmm.
your thermostat to 70 degrees. It doesn't go to 80. It stops at a certain point. That's the way the body is supposed to work. So once the stress has been responded to, you're supposed to kind of stop making the cortisol. But
Right.
sometimes this hypothalamus, it is the ultimate multitasker. It's getting all of these signals from all of these places, and sometimes it becomes a little overwhelmed and dysregulated. So there's an oil that can help put the hypothalamus back in balance so that not only is it sending appropriate signals, but it's receiving messages. So there's a way to kind of, when your phone gets all kind of silly and you have to turn it off and reboot it, you
Hmm.
can reboot your body. And oils are a fantastic tool for rebooting the body because, we're very synonymous with plants and nature. And so if you think about a blueprint for us, plants have the same blueprint. So you can combine the different frequencies of the plants to kind of match the blueprint of the body and help reset it. That's what stem
Hmm.
cells do. They haven't been programmed to the blueprint. So they just go back to the original format and kind of override any, malfunctioning systems. So that's what oils do too. They put you back to the kind of the original function. They reboot your body like you reboot your phone.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really cool. Okay,
Yeah.
so uh, let's say we've got our sleep covered. What's the
Right.
next level?
Stress. So here's
Mm.
something that's super interesting to me because I have all these clients that are kind of eating the perfect diet. They're doing, they do yoga, they meditate. They seem to be doing everything right, but they're stuck. They're not healing. And the reason they're not healing is because when the body is in stress, it's kind of in lockdown. So the nervous system, which kind of controls everything in the body, has two states. The fight or flight sympathetic state, the car almost crashes into you, the lion's chasing you, you have the crazy deadline at work. You need to mobilize energy. There's sugar in your system, the blood pumps to your extremities so you can run fast and escape the danger. And everything that's not critical to that survival shuts down. So
Hmm.
that includes your digestion, the blood's pumping away from the digestive system, your immune system, your ability to anti-inflame, because if you sprain your ankle when you're running and it starts to swell up, you're going to get eaten. So that's why, like cortisol, corticotrophins are used for inflammation. So it basically, when we're in stress, we don't realize this. Nothing else is working. So for years, when I was killing myself to make these homemade gluten-free, dairy-free meals for my children, and then we would basically wolf them down before racing to soccer practice, they weren't digesting, absorbing, or assimilating any of those nutrients because they were eating under stress. So we
Mm.
need to get the stress under control. And that
Hmm.
can be oils that we mentioned to reboot your circadian rhythm. It can be this parasympathetic blend. So what's really interesting, the on-off switch between our sympathetic fight or flight state and our parasympathetic rest and digest state is the vagal nerve, cranial nerve number 10. It starts at the very base of the skull and runs down either side of the body, kind of right behind that earlobe on the mastoid bone. If you feel there, you can feel it. and then it goes through every organ of digestion. And it sends a signal of this neurotransmitter acetylcholine down through all the organs, but it can get impeded. It can be kind of stuck in that on switch and you're sympathetic all the time, or, any kind of infection. If you're not sleeping, then the brain isn't detoxifying. So think of a bottleneck. The bottleneck is right here by the vagus nerve. If you have root canals or gum infections or dental amalgams that are kind of trying to be detoxified by the lymph nodes here, sometimes they can get a little clogged and infect the vagal nerve and infect the signaling. So just stimulating that, it's like opening up those four lanes of traffic. And all of a sudden, people who are constipated suddenly feel their stomach gurgling and things moving. People who have racing heartbeats feel themselves calm down right away. It's that self-regulation mechanism. You're hangry and then you eat and you feel better, right? It's helping to put that body back in balance so that it can then function the way it's supposed to.
Mm. Oh my goodness. Just in these two systems that we're talking about, I'm just like, wow, there's so many things. I love it because there are so many ways that I- I'm hearing that I can really support my body. Um,
Yes.
there was something else I was going to mention with the sleep piece
Yes.
was that the last couple days I noticed as it would get like like 10:30 at night, and I'm just sitting relaxing watching TV, right? Just totally just checking out, right? But then I was noticing I was starting to feel anxious, anxiety. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, that's interesting. It's like when
Yeah.
I'm allowing myself to fully relax, and then here my body is just like in overdrive. I was like, that's
Yes.
not good.
That sympathetic dominant, we get stuck kind of in that on position. And so it's really, I mean, it's the simplest trick you can do. And oils are great. Like, this is why I like blends. There are a lot of single oils that I think are fantastic and do a million things, but I'll give you an example. The parasympathetic blend, which is right here, which is a combination of clove, which is the most stimulatory of the oils, and it contains this compound eugenol, which is highly beneficial for health. And then we combined it with lime. Lime has the smallest molecules of any of the oils. So all of a sudden we have this highly stimulatory blend that is very small and very, very accessible. So it gets into the system faster and more effectively. So that's kind of what we're doing. I don't believe in reinventing the wheel. I think there are amazing companies that sell single oils and they do a really good job. So I'm not touching that. What I'm doing is trying to combine oils in a different way to almost make, the sum is greater than the parts. It's a whole different remedy that can heal in really powerful ways.
Yes. Well, yeah, I love how you're combining them so you're making them much more powerful, and
Right.
you're just able to maximize the benefit.
Exactly. Or create something new. Like
Hmm.
combining, it's like a good marriage where one person is very right brain and one person is very left brain. And suddenly that collaboration, like they're amazing together.
Hmm. Hmm. So, okay, let's talk about the stress piece some more, because these days we're all, I
Yes,
feel, over functioning, right? We're all
exactly.
loaded down with so many responsibilities that we feel like that we have to take care of.
Yes.
Um, so when we're dealing with this constant state of stress
Yes.
and burnout and all of this, I mean,
Yeah.
are we just going to be constantly behind the ball in terms of like,
Well, so if you think about your stress as like a beaker, like you have limited space for liquid in the beaker, right? And so if you fill it up, then you kind of overflow. And it's that self regulating, like when you're fed and you're calm and you're happy, you can take on more. So you can either reduce the stresses in the beaker or you can make the beaker bigger. So oils can do both. Stresses are additive and cumulative. So 2 plus 2 does not equal 4, it equals like 8 because the combination. So the more you can peel things away, and stresses can also be physiological stresses, right? Like poor detoxification. If you're not eliminating the toxins from your system, guess what? They're getting reabsorbed, and that's really stressful for your body. If you're eating foods that you're intolerant to, that's causing inflammation. So it's a combination of improving your digestion, absorption, and assimilation of nutrients, helping your detoxification so that the bad things leave your system, getting sleep so you give yourself that space to detoxify, managing your blood sugar so there aren't like peaks and valleys, spikes and lows, and then also making room for more joy. This is why things like gratitude practices, yoga, meditation, all these things that kind of bring you joy, it actually expands your capacity. And it can be completely overwhelming. But I mean, just I'll give you an example. We live in Seattle. It's a very moldy place. I noticed some mold in our bathroom, so I had it completely retiled. And the joy and happiness that I feel every day walking into my shower that now looks like a spa is unbelievable. I had no idea that was like the smallest thing, but every day when I looked at it, it would be stressful to me. And
Mm-hmm.
the mold, I'm sure, was stressful for my symptoms. So just getting rid, and you can't do everything at once, like small, little, thoughtful steps to get rid of things and also to bring in joy, having those moments. The woman Sheryl Sandberg who wrote Lean In, she talks about how when she goes to bed, she tries to think of 3 things that make her really happy or she's grateful for. So she goes to bed thinking joyful thoughts. I love that. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
easy for anyone to implement, right?
Right.
Smelling an oil can put you in a place of joy. Just think of the easy things, the things that you can totally manage. And then as your capacity grows, you can expand more and more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that ties into the
Exactly.
emotional system.
Yes.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think I think the joy piece is huge, especially for me. It's been really in my awareness that I do need to bring or create more space for joy
Yes.
instead of focusing on all the responsibilities and the doing,
Right.
more of the enjoyment and fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and the emotional piece, I mean, this is where oils can really be quite magical. So it's interesting. The channels into the body, if you think about it, are the digestive tract, obviously, and then the transdermal channel. So our skin, nicotine patches, hormone creams, and the olfactory system.
Hmm.
And the way the olfactory system works, we smell the oil and it sends signals to the olfactory bulb, which is part of the limbic brain, kind of the primitive brain. The other parts of the limbic brain are the amygdala, the hypothalamus. Um, well, there's a lot of parts, but those are kind of
Yeah.
important. But what's interesting, the amygdala, there's this amazing researcher out of NYU named Joseph Luda, and he found kind of in the early 90s that the amygdala basically overrides all other systems in the brain. So the prefrontal cortex is kind of our logical thinking, everything. If the amygdala senses danger, like that trumps all. It's kind of
Hmm.
the control station. And then this woman out of Brown University, Rachel Hers, basically figured out that because the olfactory bulb is next to the amygdala, scent is the most powerful message signaler. So, some people take that to the extreme of, oh, smelling oils is better than talk therapy. But there, I don't know if anything's better or worse. I think everything is good. But you can use oils to trigger the amygdala and to kind of consciously release trauma, because one of the other things about stress, it's not just your job or your relationship or your finances. It can be past trauma. This is what post-traumatic stress is. You have that memory and you're thinking about it, and and kind of the survival mechanism throughout history, if your village burned down because there was a fire and you sense fire, of course you're going to go into panic. It's going to save
Hmm.
your. So that still is at play if you're angry about something or you're afraid of something. Fear is a big trigger, or you're grieving someone. This is why people who lose a loved one often die within short order, because grief can be an enormous stressor. Or you had some kind of trauma in life. Every time you kind of replay that memory in your mind, your body responds as if it's happening in the moment. And you can use oils, and I can actually show you what I do. My
Sure.
favorite
Yeah.
one, many of the women that I deal with, it's either fear or anger, because so many of us were kind of taught to be nice and not complain. And so things happen and we're just polite, but we're kind of
Hmm.
not. It's like it stays in our system, and it stays, if you believe Chinese medicine, in the liver. So we're polite, but boy, are we grumpy on the inside. And one way to release that is we have a liver support blend that's really good for this. I love it. My friends call it their PMS blend because it's really good for hangry moods. But you just you can smell in a lot of complicated ways. People have like made machines that diffuse it. Whatever kind of speaks to you. I'm pretty simple, so I just put it under my nose. But if you inhale and kind of think about that trauma and where it lives in your body, and then with the exhale, you can release. And
Hmm.
just like if you're starving and you get, like, say you're at an all you can eat buffet, Once you're full, you don't eat anymore. With smell, at a certain point, usually between 3 to 7 breaths, you'll stop smelling it. And
Ah,
and it's important to kind of, if you think of it like a fishing hook, like really think about what you're getting, go down, grab it, and then release it and pull it out of you. But then the other important point is that now you have an empty space and you need to fill that with something positive. So
right.
I love affirmations, like the opposite of fear is safety, the opposite of anger is joy. So, really think about filling that space. You can visualize white light, whatever speaks to you, but kind of filling that up with the opposite. So now you've like unleashed it and it's, released, and you've replaced it with something more positive.
Mm-hmm. All right. So what goes after the anger? What, because you said like the blends.
Oh,
What?
right. So the anger blend is the liver support blend. And that's often, it's interesting when people have detoxifications, they're detoxifying emotions too. And
Mm-hmm.
so you're kind of loosening them up. And even if you're having like some kind of lymphatic treatment, it's kind of important to take a binder. Like Epsom salts can help. Epsom salt baths can pull things out of your system. Things like chlorella or psyllium. If you just kind of charcoal, take something internally so that those emotions have something to bind to, so that they leave your system. Anger is really key. You can smell the blend. You can put it over your liver. You can use it in combination with castor oil that helps kind of pull things out of your system. For the fear ones, we have kidney support. Fear kind of lives in the kidneys, which is why, the adrenals sit on top of the kidneys, which makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the fear that triggers the adrenal response. So just helping to work through that and release that. We have one, trauma. So many of my friends had some kind of sexual trauma at some point in their early life, and that kind of lives in the bladder. And so just allowing themselves to release that and work through that. Emotions actually have the word motion in it. We're supposed to kind of move through it and then get out the other side. But what happens is we get a little stuck, and then it can, you know, block systems in the body and
Mm-hmm.
present as all sorts of challenges.
Mm. So fascinating. So then the next level is digestion.
Yes, digestion is really important. It's kind of, it's the raw materials that make up our body, right? And if we're deficient in vitamin D or zinc, it's a little bit like, think of the Three Little Pigs, right? You can build your house out of straw, out of wood, or out of bricks. What's going to withstand the big bad wolf? The bricks. So you want the best raw materials possible. So if you're not digesting, absorbing, and assimilating your nutrients, you're kind of missing an opportunity. So that starts with putting your body in that parasympathetic rest and digest state. And then also the pancreas. Pancreas has a lot of big jobs. It works with blood sugar. It kind of shuttles the blood sugar into our cells by releasing insulin. It also works to release digestive enzymes. So it helps us to break down our food so it can actually be absorbed. And it gets tired, especially for women that are kind of under chronic stress, because the body is constantly dumping out hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, which trigger a sugar response. So you have energy to survive whatever the challenge is. And then the pancreas is kind of the cleanup crew. It releases insulin and gets the sugar back into the cells. So sometimes supporting it, either through digestive enzymes or through our pancreas oil is a really great trick. And
Mm.
then finally, the gallbladder. The gallbladder does a lot of things. It stores bile, and bile is really critical both for emulsifying fat, like people that might get motion sick, or if you get a little queasy when you eat a fatty meal, or maybe you get headaches right here, or kind of pain between the shoulder blades. Those are all indications that your bile is it should be more like water, but it gets kind of molassesy. So
Mm.
when it gets viscous like that, it doesn't necessarily flow out of the system. And it breaks down fat, but it also carries out toxins like excess estrogen. So if it's not actually exiting the system, then it's getting reabsorbed and reassimilated. So it can present as like estrogen dominance, which is more estrogen than progesterone. So those are kind of the
Wow.
components of optimal digestion.
Now for a quick break. Have you created vision boards, listened to meditations, and read books on how the law of attraction works, yet you're still not where you want to be? The key to manifesting is focusing your attention on your big dreams consistently, fully embodying the feeling as if it's already happening. And you may already know this, but it's not that easy, is it? It can really be tough to do alone. And that's why I created the Envision Experience, a revolutionary and simple 28-day process for powerful quantum level dream manifesting. Over 4 weeks, you'll get laser focused guidance, accountability, support, plus a powerful personalized movie to help you envision and embody your dreams into reality. So if this sounds interesting to you, I'd love for you to join us. You can find out more at theawakenedgoddess.com/envision-experience. Now back to the show. Yeah, so talk about leaky gut. Because this was something that I only heard about just recently. And I was like, wow, just hearing the symptoms, I was like, I think that I need to check that out.
Everyone, most people have it because
okay.
well, Roundup Ready uses glyphosate, which actually is damaging to the intestinal lining. So if you think about the lining of the small intestine, you could actually lay it out over an entire tennis court. It's really compacted and tightly wound, and it's in the small intestine that both the good things get in, the nutrients get assimilated, and the bad things stay out. It's selectively permeable. There are these tight junctions between the cells, and it's a little bit like the doorman at an exclusive club. It lets certain people in and keeps other people out. But what happens is that when it gets irritated, either from genetically modified food, pesticides, environmental toxins, it becomes less selective. And the bad things can get in, including like undigested proteins, which can then trigger an immune response that lead to a food intolerance or sometimes an allergy. So it's kind of the integrity of the permeability is compromised. And then all of a sudden things are in your system and they get carried through the blood, and it can be what's called leaky brain. It leads to systemic inflammation because the gut is inflamed, and actually the majority of the immune system lives in the gut. It's these prior patches kind of in the small intestine. So it throws everything off. So what you need to do is if there are foods that are triggering that inflammatory response, you need to take them out of your diet for a little bit. And then you need to add in healing nutrients like fatty acids are very anti-inflammatory. Any green leafy vegetables are really healing. And oils have that same healing property. So we have an anti-inflammatory blend that you can kind of rub around your belly button, around your tummy. We also have one for intestinal mucosa. It's really interesting. If you think about trying to put wallpaper on the wall without any paste, it's not going to stick, right?
Right.
So it's the intestinal mucosa. We think of mucus as, being kind of something that's undesirable, but it's really quite necessary. And it gets really thin when, we're eating a lot of food that isn't necessarily, that's inflaming our systems, or if food sits in our stomach for too long, like some of these small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, SIBO or IBS. What's happening is the digestive system, it's a little bit like timed trains, right? It goes to one station, then it moves to the next, and it's supposed to be moving through like a housekeeping wave. But what happens is that sometimes that rhythm gets thrown off and it sits too long in one place, and then like the fats rancidify and the carbs petrify, and there's a bacteria overgrowth. So we need to kind of get it back in the rhythm, and that comes from the parasympathetic response. It manages the flow and the timing through the whole digestive cascade. So to kind of heal your leaky gut, it's a combination of removing the things that are causing inflammation, layering in foods that are healing, and then supporting kind of the repair through anti-inflammatory supplements. Turmeric is great, oils are great, and helping to revitalize that intestinal mucosal lining. Because at the end of the day, you do want the good bacteria in there, the probiotics, but there's a little bit of a timing element to healing the gut. You don't necessarily want to, you kind of want to get rid of the bad before you throw in the good. So you can heal the mucosal lining and then layer in the probiotics when you're kind of on the other side of healing.
Yeah, so for people that have never heard of leaky gut, some of the symptoms are like fatigue, sleepiness, foggy brain. What else? Joint pain.
Joint pain, and it can be pain that moves around, rashes, any kind of eczema or skin condition, rosacea. A lot of fatigue often. It's a little bit of, it's a catch-all. It can be anything, brain fog, pain. It can present as anxiety or depression. I have a whole list actually in the book. Actually, you know what? I'm going to look. I'll tell you exactly. I'll read you the whole
Yeah.
list. Quite long.
Yeah. Well, I know for me personally that the fatigue and the foggy brain, that's been like a consistent for a good portion of my life. And so when I heard
Yes.
about leaky gut and the symptoms, I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on. And like, if, like, I pretty much have cut out, like, I won't eat bread, um, just because a lot of these things will, I will feel like I'm going into a coma. Like,
Yes.
I
Yes.
literally, it's like I can hardly even pick up my body. I'm just like,
Yeah. No, yeah, and that's really good to notice. And a lot of it is, quite honestly, this glyphosate and Roundup Ready. So it's not just gluten; it's kind of all grains. It's corn, it's soy, it's dairy for some people. It's eggs and nuts and eggplant and tomatoes. There's actually an autoimmune paleo diet. You can really take out there's like the base level, which is gluten and dairy. Dairy is highly inflammatory, so just removing that. But then if you're not noticing improvement, you go to kind of the next level and get all these other foods. So
yeah, I
yeah,
was gonna say, Jody, what are we supposed to eat?
yeah, you pretty much eat the paleo diet. You eat like any kind of animal meat. You eat any kind of. Most people can tolerate nuts. You eat fruit. You eat vegetables. It can be incredibly limiting, and you have to get incredibly creative. Coconut can be your best friend. Coconut oil, coconut manna, coconut butter. But yeah, it can be a lot. But here's the good news: it's not forever. It's a little bit like if you're trying to take a road trip, you're in Portland, you want to go to Seattle, say, oops, you wind up in Bend, you went the wrong way. You just turn around. Like the body can
Mm,
always heal. It can always
okay.
find its way back to balance. So it's not forever. It's kind of a short therapeutic period of getting yourself, back on track.
Okay. So it's not that we have to cut out like the dairy forever.
No,
It's
no.
okay.
Yeah, and even sometimes it's like turning off your phone. It depends on how long you've been out of balance. Sometimes, those 21 days detox, that can work wonders because it's like a reboot for your system. You're basically allowing your body, it's like going like college finals, right? You're up all night, you're studying intensely, and then when it's done, you need like a day to sleep. You just
Hmm.
need to get back into your rhythm. So, giving yourself 21 days to kind of take out things that might be causing an inflammatory reaction and then adding in the good, you might be good to go. Sometimes it's longer, but most people, it's not forever. Most people can add things back into their diets.
Hmm.
And it's help. It's like biking with the wind at your back. It just helps to accelerate the healing.
Okay. Yeah, because I've done a few detoxes or cleanses or like juicing things, and
Yeah.
then it just seems like I keep getting more and more sensitive. So it's
Yes. Yes.
it's
That
tough.
can happen. That can happen too because like for example, when I gave up sugar, I didn't realize you get so used to it that you don't quite realize how it triggers you. And so I was pretty clean, and I went to a Super Bowl party, and I was starving, and then there was no healthy food there, so I ate a donut, which I never eat. I felt like I was on cocaine. Like I couldn't believe how much my heart was beating, and it was so obvious how much I was reacting to this because I was clean. So sometimes that just means, you need to give it a little bit longer,
Hmm.
but it's not forever.
Yeah. Good. Good to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the next level? What's the next system?
Detoxification is really important. I mean, this is kind of underrated, but sometimes you even need to make sure that the detoxification pathways are open before you start kind of a healing gut protocol because it will mobilize toxins. And again, if they're not leaving your system, they're just getting recirculated. So when everyone thinks of detoxification, they think of the liver and the gallbladder, and those are kind of the heavy hitters. They do most of the work, but the kidneys are also involved in detoxification. The lymphatic system plays a really important role in detoxification in the brain. So you need to make sure you're sleeping. That's why they tell you try to get at least 8 hours of sleep when you're detoxing. And in fact, the hours of sleep before midnight are more powerful than after. So if you can get to bed at 9 o'clock, which might be really hard for a lot of people, but even if you can do it for a week, that's important to try. And the other thing is the lymphatic system. It works kind of in combination with the circulatory system, but it doesn't have a pump. So, the heart is pumping the blood. We don't really have a way to be pumping the lymph fluid through our body, and it's cleaning out everything. It's cleaning out not just the cells, but kind of the intercellular fluid. It's getting nutrients into the fluid. So that's a really important system to optimize as you're trying to heal. And there are ways to do it. We have some lymph oil that you can, the lymphatic system is concentrated kind of in lymph nodes right around the neck, right under the arms, and then right along the bikini line. And so applying the oil helps to move them. There's also dry brushing. You get kind of one of those brushes from Bed Bath & Beyond, and you're just trying to open up the roadways. So you kind of start close to the system and brush up and open up the congestion so that it's a little bit like the traffic. You really want to make sure everything is able to drain out. So it's important, I would almost prioritize that. After stress and sleep, I think opening up the detoxification pathways is kind of the number one thing, because if you're going to start dumping toxins, you want to make sure they're leaving the body.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so are we done at that point, or is there more?
So it's a little bit of a three-legged stool, right? You've got the stress, you've got impaired detoxification, and you've got gut inflammation. And that's what's going on in most people. And some people are highly asymptomatic, and some people are very sensitive. And that's at the root of a lot of autoimmunity and chronic illnesses as well. And so you're trying to put it back in balance. So stress is the most important, and sleep goes along with stress, because if you're in stress, you can't heal. Then once you kind of start working on the stress, you also want to open up the detoxification channels. And then you kind of layer in the gut healing. So ideally, you're doing all three in tandem, but it's good to make sure that you're eliminating toxins as you go. So this is where Epsom salt baths, 2 cups of Epsom salt, 1 cup of baking soda, and a couple of drops of oil. Mix the oil into the salt so that it doesn't float on the surface. That's a really good way to pull toxins out of your system. Castor oil packs, you can make it super complicated or not so much. If you want to do it complicated, you soak burlap in castor oil, and then you put it over your liver, which is kind of right side of your body under your ribs. And then it's messy. So you want to put it all down, you put plastic wrap over it, and then you can do a heating pad. So that's kind of the complicated way to do a castor oil pack. The lazy man's version is that you just take a little bit of castor oil, put it on your liver. I combine it with oil, and you wear a ratty t-shirt, and you go to bed, and the heat of your body works as well. So kind of, everyone likes different levels.
I like that version. I tried the other one. Oh, it is so nasty. It's so messy.
It's messy. It's really messy. And what I found with oils too is people want to make it really complicated, and sometimes that is what they need. Like people that have spent thousands of dollars on things and they just don't want to get it wrong. I have put together use sheets that give you like the exact position of different organs, and you can absolutely use oils that way. You can also decide intuitively, like, I think this works on my wrists, or I'm going to put this on my forehead. And you know what? That's perfect too. There is no right or wrong. It's just kind of what bodes with your comfort level.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I can see why, because this is very exciting, getting all of this information and hearing all of these systems. And it's like, I want to, like you say, you want to kind of try to do it all at the same time.
Yes.
But does everybody need to start at the sleep level?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. If you're not sleeping, start there. If you are sleeping, congratulations, you pass go and collect $200, you go to stress. I think honestly, for most people out there, the parasympathetic is the most important thing to work on. So making sure you're in that parasympathetic state. And some people, like many of your listeners are probably already practicing meditation and yoga and can do it. It's that yoga breathing that kind of triggers that parasympathetic response. The parasympathetic oil is just another little helper. It's like biking with the wind in your back when it's not sleeting down rain and you're well hydrated and you have a good night's sleep. So just applying that kind of right behind the earlobe on the mastoid bone. And then if sleep is an issue, we talked about falling asleep. Many people are able to fall asleep, but then they wake up in the middle of the night. And that can be either hormonal issues, it can be detoxification issues, or blood sugar. So if you're waking up and you're like wide awake and you could go clean the kitchen, here's what's happening. Your blood sugar dipped in the middle of the night, which means that your body thinks there's an emergency. So it releases adrenaline. And guess what that adrenaline wakes you up. And then it's that job of the pancreas to kind of mop up the adrenaline and get you back to sleep. So we have a
Mm.
pancreas blend that supports the pancreas. And honestly, when you have those kind of wake ups, just smelling it, you feel drowsy and you're better able to drift off to sleep. Other wake ups can be around 3 a.m. when you might feel like you need to go to the bathroom and you're slightly groggy. That's the liver working too hard. Like I have those, not that I'm a big drinker, but if I happen to drink wine and I don't remember to put the liver blend on before I go to bed, I'll wake up at 3 in the morning. And it's just the liver working a little bit harder. So anything you can do to support the liver, be it an oil, castor oil, sometimes taking activated charcoal helps to pull toxins out, things like that, that will help you fall back asleep. And then another issue is hormonal wake ups, which are similar to blood sugar wake ups. It's kind of the adrenaline, waking you up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Huh. Wow. So I love how it's interesting how different times of the evening, if you wake
Yes,
up at certain times, that there is a
yes.
specific element that goes with that.
Well, that's the challenge with some of the sleep medications is they just are blanket tranquilizers. They're not actually looking at why you're waking up and helping you get to the root cause so you can resolve it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so you've provided us all this amazing information. And so how does someone decide what to use and like how to get started?
Well, that's really what I really am about teaching you to fish, not giving you the fish. And that's kind of the reason that I wrote this book. And it's got a million checklists and charts. I really want you to understand kind of what's going on with yourself so that you can start to heal. So you can buy the book on Amazon. You can go to my site, and under the Learn tab, there are tons of resources with checklists. And you can start to understand what's happening in your systems. So the priorities are, if you're not sleeping, start there. If you have any kind of like anxiety or depression or overriding emotions, that's triggering your body into a stress response. So you can work on that. If a lot of skin conditions like eczema or rashes or rosacea are just, the body's not necessarily detoxifying efficiently, so it's coming out your skin. So that would be a reason to look at detoxification support. Lymphatic support is really helpful. Even if just dry brushing, it doesn't need to be expensive. Bouncing on a trampoline, doing yoga, moving your arms above your head. Anything that you can do to get that lymphatic system flowing is going to be hugely helpful. So it's kind of
Right.
figuring out where you might be stuck, because some people, they're great sleepers. They fall asleep, they don't wake up, until they need to. So that's not their problem, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, so it's a very individual, like we all have to check
It
in for
is.
ourselves.
We
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's why, a lot of these things like kids on the spectrum, they present with different symptoms, or people with Lyme disease, different symptoms present. It's often kind of the weakest link. So we're all going to be different. So we kind of need to respect that and really try to find the remedy that makes the most sense for our condition and our
Mm-hmm.
present state.
Mm-hmm. Now, is there a little exercise that you can walk us through?
What's really interesting, like for anyone who I guess the biggest thing I like to do is when we're in stress, we have two adrenal glands that sit on each side of the kidneys. And they one tends to work harder, so it can kind of twerk the back a little bit and it makes one leg appear
Oh.
longer, or it can throw off our balance. So one of my favorite exercises, it's kind of a grounding exercise. I like to just try to do tree pose and see how long I can hold that on each leg. Like I'll do it, I'll just count and see. And then I'll either apply, like you can do deep breathing. Basically, it's a good way to assess your ability to balance your stress and to impart resilience. So you can use the parasympathetic oil, you can use any oil you like, the adrenal oil, and again, try to do that, and count to as many as you can. And you'll often find that the more grounded you are and the more resilient you are, the longer you can hold that balance position. Sometimes people can hold it forever. And that's just empowering you. It's this idea of grounding, earthing, whatever you want to call it. It's resilience, it's imparting resilience. So before you go into a big meeting, before you have any kind of stressful conversation, you can use oils, you can use whatever you want. But I just really encourage people to kind of ground themselves and put themselves in that best possible outcome.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So now, if someone wants to go through the whole, like every single system, now I know
Yeah,
it's going to be different for every single person, but is
right.
there like a kind of like a timeline that we can get a general timeline of how long it would take to work through each of the systems?
That's a terrific question, and it's different for each person. It's kind of like if you are 5 miles lost, you're going to get there quicker than if you're 100 miles lost. But one of the reasons we designed the little bottles is that it should really, in the course of a bottle, you should definitely feel a shift. Like if you're insomniac and you're taking our circadian rhythm oil, you should feel it right away. If you're having an anxiety attack and you smell our adrenal balance oil, you should know right away. It's interesting. Like oils, you don't necessarily realize how powerful they work until you need them. Like a friend of mine lost her husband. He had a heart attack when he was asleep, and he was 45. And our children are very close. It completely, set me like the grief I felt was so overwhelming and so profound. And we have oils for grief. We have one for lung support, and then the rose blend is really good. And when I smelled the oils before and they were fine, but all of a sudden when I was in my lowest low, and my friend too, of grief, they were amazing. It's when you're so far out of balance and they put you back in balance, you can really tell immediately. So to answer your question, often you will feel results immediately. How long until you heal depends on how out of balance you are. Often it can be the course of a bottle, like the gallbladder blend. If your bile is really viscous and you're trying to get it to flow better, by the time you're done with a bottle, which can take anywhere between a month to 2 months, depending on how aggressively you use it, you should move on to the next issue and you should be fine. Things like parasympathetic, I continue to use forever because you're never going to take away those crazy little stressors in your daily life. The circadian rhythm blend I like just because I know sleep is so important. And also it's really interesting. I get very vivid dreams from the circadian rhythm blend. So I like that. I feel like it's good intuitive guidance.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun to be able to tap into dreams and remember them.
Yes, yes. And
Very
that's
good.
actually, everyone should remember their dreams. Like there was a long time in my life that I didn't, and I didn't realize that there was anything wrong with that. It's a sign of good health when you remember your dreams, that you're sleeping soundly.
Wow. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. This has been like a really fascinating conversation. Like I said at the very beginning, I've used essential oils and used them for mood elevation, or just to smell good, or for
Yeah.
whatever. But I love that there's so much more depth to it, and that we can really help support ourselves um, through essential oils. And I'm really excited to, I want to go through step by step through the process.
Oh yeah, yeah, and it's interesting because certain different people respond to different things. Like any of my friends that have insomnia, they love circadian rhythm. Like they can't get enough. Anyone who's dealt with a child with constipation, they call the parasympathetic like the poop blend because it's that parasympathetic response that moves things through the body. So it kind of depends on what your weak link is, what will speak to you the most. But yeah. Oh, and that's the other thing. Once, like, the sense of smell is really powerful, right? It's kind of a big alerter to danger and what we should eat. That's why we smell our food. And, if the milk smells rancid, you're not going to drink it. So
Mhm.
the sense what things smell like to you will change as you heal. So something might smell completely delicious when your body needs it. Like, if you're craving chocolate, you often need magnesium. If you crave a hamburger, you need iron. And then the next day, the hamburger or the chocolate might not be as appealing. Similarly, when your body is trying to get back in balance with a certain condition, like the gallbladder blend, for example, smelled amazing to me when I needed it. Now that I don't need it, it's not as delightful.
Oh,
So
interesting.
sense of smell.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jodi, for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom. And just you gave us so much great information to work with. And so, yeah, you guys, if this is of interest to you, definitely connect with Jodi and pick up her book, because I had a chance to preview it, and she has all these beautiful pictures. So, yeah, definitely check it out. So, thank
Well,
you,
and
Jodi.
we're gifting a free chapter too, the first chapter, if
Yes.
they want to make sure that, they want to test drive before they buy.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank
Thank
you,
you.
Jodi. This was awesome.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Awakened Goddess Show. I hope you enjoyed today's guest and got something you can start using in your life right away. For more spiritual insights and to listen to more episodes, subscribe to The Awakened Goddess Show at theawakenedgoddess.com and discover wisdom that'll change your life.